vision for this is that as soon as we get through going through the complete policy with all of our answers, and then we're going to probably move to smaller writing groups to come up with our suggestions, and we'll come back and do focus groups and bring it out to the community, and through that process have a very complete list of suggestions. Okay? So this is really kind of like a work session. Feel free to participate in the discussion. Can you make that a little bit bigger? My eyes are not that great. So we've already answered a few of these. And Mia, did you bring copies of the policy? We pass these out. And let's go around the room also and have everybody introduce themselves so that we're friendly that way.
Greg.
Yeah, Greg.
I'm first. Yeah. Greg Rice.
John Boutin with the Southwest Common Council Education Committee.
Ross Fizio.
I'm Jennifer Lanier with Rochester Public Library.
Molly Clifford, I represent the Northwest District of the Rochester City Council.
Education.
Kathy Hargis, student placement.
What I see here is, okay, so I'm going to pass out the policy as it is. It's actually not that long, so we can have it for reference where you can see where my questions came from. Oh, great, much bigger text. Thank you very much. My eyes are happy. And maybe we'll spend just a couple minutes. Hi, welcome. Looking at the minutes from last time, so everyone take one. Do we have any suggestions for the minutes? And let's have the folks who just came in introduce themselves too.
I'm Paul Conroe. I am a parent of 4 RCSD kids. I've taught at East High for 15 years, and I am a proud East High grad myself, RCSD product.
Well, Robin Detman, I guess you can call me a community member. I'm on the board of Baobab Cultural Center. Both of my children went through this, our Rochester City School District from first grade till when they graduated and went on to college.
So, does everybody have a policy, copy of the policy? Okay, so let's scroll down to our next part. And Kathy, you can certainly help us with this. The policy states we want policy to be tamper-proof, the formula for selecting kids and where they go. So it's probably a great question for you. Is the policy tamper-proof?
I mean, in one way, the answer to that is yes. I mean, you have to look at it and say, you know, there's a policy and a process. So when you look at the kinder lottery and people putting their policy in the kinder lottery, from that perspective, there would be little or no way that you could change the outcome of that because it's done by a computer. There can be upon occasion tampering with the policy, but there are some very strict guidelines about what those are.
Yes.
Okay, so like at number 4 school has all of our students with significant intellectual disabilities. If you are the sibling of a student with intellectual disabilities and your parent asks, we go to number 4 school and there's a seat, we'll put you there. Because that allows the family to be together. So there's a couple of unique programs. The one number 4, School 25 has the STEPS program. That's the only place that happens in the district. And then there's an autism program. Sometimes it's at 45, sometimes it's at 8. You know, so the same thing. So when there are kids with significant needs where the district says to the parents, this is the only place you can put your child because of their needs, we will put their students.
Okay, well, that makes sense.
So,
because-
you know, when you say, is it tamper-proof, well, I mean, that's not what the policy says we should do, but we do it because that's best practice for families and kids. And those are really the only exceptions that, you know, I can.
Right, and that's a larger concern because we are concerned that there are families that have their children spread out among lots of schools. So it makes sense to have something specific in the policy that says we can adjust to support, adjust placement to support family cohesion.
You know, so, you know, so if you have a student with a disability and they have a learning disability and they're in their zone school, then you need to be, you know, I mean, so we don't move kids out of the zone if the programs exist in their zone. It's just that when there's unique one time, only one place where the programs.
Okay. So we have a specific rationale behind that, tampering sort of negative term adjustments.
Right.
So, okay, let's go on to the next one. Does this policy prescribe? Oh yeah.
I want to say something about that. I think there are a lot of specifics in town placement works that are not spelled out, and when you call and ask a question, you get a different answer two different times. And so, do tamper with the policy. I don't know if I necessarily call it tampering, but keep calling until you get the answer you want. And so the people who either know to do this or bother to do this get a different outcome than people who don't.
So you're pointing out that there seems to be inconsistencies with both call and placing offers to get clarification. That feels like the inconsistency feels like maybe the pushy parents get an answer they want if they push hard enough, and non-pushy parents don't. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And I think the solution to that is just to make it more, have the policy exist.
Because if you have a written policy, you should be able to get the same answer every time. That's the
Consistency
point.
and illuminate these unwritten actions that are happening, like, you know, clustering families together among, you know, one building. So that makes sense. David, anything to say about that? Like,
On occasion, I'll get an email from the superintendent to put a kid somewhere and I do.
okay, so there's some other exceptions.
I mean, and I don't just mean the superintendent. I mean someone above me on the chain of command because, you know, I mean,
That's the G.
well, but I'm just saying that, you know, when we got audited by the external auditing place, they said, you know, you probably are always in a district this size going to have a 1% kind of flexibility that you need for placement. And they weren't even concerned about 2 or 3 times that it happened. You know, but those, you know, in terms of like placement staff, we really work very hard and train our staff very hard to be the same with everyone. That's like our mantra, you know, we're the same.
And to
Things
the
happen.
Yeah, and to the extent that you know, pushes from above or special favors are done, that creates problems all over. So we really do need to work on consistency around that. So it's good to acknowledge that and highlight that, and make a special, put some special verbiage around that.
I was gonna s-
Places.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
in the margins, how you just described about keeping families together and things like that, because one of the children has a need that will put them in a certain building, that should be in the margin someplace where the person answering the phone can answer it consistent to the policy, yet at the same time recognize that there are some exceptions and these are the exceptions.
We want to identify as many
Right.
exceptions as
Right.
possible and make
Right.
clear rationale for the decisions behind those exceptions.
You know, the exceptions are very few, but you're right.
Yeah.
It's hard to put in policy because, you know, not tomorrow, but next year you wake up and the special program, you know, you need to do this. But so you have to just work on the wording to say, you know, like the unique, you know.
Let's move on to the next one. Does the policy prescribe ways of upgrading low-achieving schools and replicating successful schools? Because it's stated that it would.
I would say no. I think my experience as a student in the 90s and as a teacher, this is what the high school level, but this policy promotes vying for students. You want your school to be selected by the highest achieving students. If I'm a principal of a building and I'm very popular because of the programs that I run, and I'm drawing from all over the city, and my colleague says, "Boy, Mr. Conroe, your school is always the number one choice." And I'm sitting with Ralph Spezio, and I know he wants to duplicate my program. He used to be gunning for the same kids. So I think the policy and the execution of it, and Ralph, you'd be a much better source than I would, but I don't know as though the principals would say that they are encouraged to share competitive programs. And a principal naturally does not want to do that in this district, because then if their neighboring schools get as good, then they're going to have a smaller pool of kids choosing their school. Does that make sense?
That's interesting. So the fact of competition.
Competition is very bad.
It's a problem.
I was just from a high school level. My first year teaching, I was given a release day to go to Wilson High School. I wanted to see George, the guy who did the homework hotline stuff. He was a science teacher.
George Wolf.
George Wolf.
Yeah.
I was going to say Wilson, and it wasn't Wilson. When I got there, his administrator was very upset that a spy from East High was coming over to see what they were doing at Wilson. And that's a culture that exists. It's palpable.
You're messing with statistics.
You're
adding
George Wolf
other.
blew him off and he was joking about it, but like I could see the principal, the admin angrily pointing at George, because that was in a glass wall room. He said what was going down. They thought I was spying. I really just wanted to see the homework hotline guy teach.
So we're not going to do suggestions at this point, but we might be thinking about that later. What can we do about the competition culture? Who else?
I was just going to say that, but the other piece of that, is, okay, so we have 58 schools, which everyone wants. So the superintendent created school number 10 under the same model of instruction. And this is the first year so this was, 6 years ago, maybe more, 7 years ago that we created School 10. This is the first year that School 10 has had a wait list for kinder placements, which is not as long as the wait list for 58, but it really takes a long. People pick on reputation, not on reality. And you have to keep remembering, people pick on reputation, not reality. So 10 schools finally getting the reputation to be doing the same quality work and the same type of instruction that's happening at 58 schools. But it has taken a really long time, and people were like, well, I never heard that. So they don't check the box. So, anyway, so part of what you have to remember is that PR and information piece is crucial. And talk about your school. If neighborhood schools are going to make it, it's because some neighborhood parent from this neighborhood walks around to his neighborhood doors, not the school administrator, not, the parents say, hey, I'm sending my kid here, and they've been here for 3 years, and these are the wonderful things about it.
That's true, because in the 90s, I can identify with that. So I actually had parents coming to me saying that the pipes burst in their apartment. They have to move, but they don't want to move out of the neighborhood because they would not be able to go to school second time. And it was in many of our. It's a survival technique to have a powerful grapevine in the neighborhood, and that grapevine does exactly what Kathy just said. Parents talk to one another, and if the experiences and relationships with the school are positive, then that spreads. So And that's when I worked with Eric Van Duzen at the time. He was with another agency, and we identified apartments in that neighborhood so that he helped keep the parents there. So it was one of the tools to stabilize mobility.
So that makes me really curious about Molly or Jen, and what thoughts you have about that grapevine through city contacts and structures and library structures. And have any thoughts about that or observations about that? I'm not asking for solutions necessarily, just.
Well, I think it's very true. Yeah, word of mouth is very powerful. As that was just being discussed, I thought in my mind about the thing we do in the library is called read-alikes. You know, if there's a Game of Thrones book that's hugely popular, and people all want something like that, so librarians put together lists. You know, if you like Game of Thrones, try these. Maybe that's something you can do in schools. You know, if you like School 58, you'll love School 10. You know, or et cetera, and maybe group them when you get to that time of rolling this out at least, and then they'll show people the schools that have similar programs.
You call it read-alikes?
Read-alikes.
See, to me, everything is based on relationships, and it's so much easier for a principal to market their school, to create positive relationships within a catchment area. So, again, I knew every single. It was such a wonderful thing. I knew every single family in the school catchment area in the 90s when I stopped the bus open enrollment to School 17. Then, when I came back for 2 years, 750 children, 650 from the east side bused in, 32 buses. So, think about this. How can a principal, it's very important for the principal to make relationships and to model those relationships with the staff and all those other things. So when you have a school catchment area where you know all the families and make it a point to know all the families, that compared to a situation where over 600 kids are bussed in from all parts of the city, that's impossible. I don't care how skillful you are, you simply can't get relationships with all those families on the east side. But you can easily do those relationships within a catchment area. And so I remember walking down the street, 5:30, people on the porch, I knew them. I wind up on the porch and then wind up at the kitchen table. They invited me for dinner. Or I felt treated as a family member and not the school principal. That was a level of trust. And I never betrayed that trust. So that's something that I easily built on as a school principal. Huge parent-teacher PTA, charter PTA, all those things that mean something to people who are forced to be in isolation. That's a vehicle for them too. So.
I think just building on that, you know, even though some neighborhood associations are stronger than others, where there is school presence in the neighborhood association, you know, those are people who go and talk to other people. And certainly, you know, we see it with Josanna and School 17 with Ralph and Katarina. That neighborhood association wants School 17 to do well. You know, they are supporters. There's a built-in network there. And, you know, I've heard it, a couple of the neighborhood people saying to other people, have you met that Katarina? She is great. I don't have kids that age, but I did. You know, she would go, she was down here and just walked the kids home the other day. And, you know, so, you know, those relationships do.
Yeah, she's rapidly building those types of relationships. And she's building the school from the primary into a neighborhood school once again. I mean, that's how I got the health center and the funding for it. That's how I got the dental center. That's why I brought Montessori into the district, and literally had Kodak build the building for it. It's all because of people were convinced that the wraparound services and the building being open to the community, that health center open to the community was the first in New York State. First in New York State. The New York State Education Department and the Health Department of New York State said, "What? Are you kidding me? Sick people on an elementary school campus? Mental health services on an elementary?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah." And so the superintendent and the county executive had a special courier sent to the governor, Louis Pataki, to have the education department and the state health department sign off on saying okay to that construction.
I just want to point out, I think the answer is policy. No, it's a no. The policy doesn't replicate the programs, but what are we saying? It was the parent opinion and the parent recommendations is what does it rather than the policy? That's what I was hearing, not the policy doesn't. The question is, does the policy describe this of upgrading low-achieving schools and replicating successful schools?
I would say the answer to this question is no, but I think it's sort of outside of placement policy.
And that's a good point, because there's some things that we can't address that are outside the policy, but I just want us to make sure we're clear. No, the parents do. The parents, through reputation, the policy doesn't prescribe ways of upgrading.
But at the same time, if we're enacting a policy about placement, there's an end in mind, right? And it's obvious that we want schools to do as best as they can. But I think it does kind of go hand in hand that whatever we put down, there should be things in there to at least verify that things are moving forward. I don't know as though we can point to the last 15 years and say we moved Rochester's elementary schools in as far a positive direction as had been intended 15 years ago. So I mean, and this policy impacts that.
So that would be in the suggestions column, which we're not doing today, which is we want incentives in the policy that would make this happen. We don't see it currently right now.
One of the things that we've run into, I think, with the current policy is that we've got kids going to a lot of areas. And for instance, when they closed 16 over on Post Avenue, not too many of the people that were involved in the running of the 19th Ward Community Association had kids currently going to 16. And it took a while to get up a head of steam to get people, worked up to oppose having 16 closed and get the board to decide to get it renovated and bring kids back. And then the policy, then 10 was slated for closing, and again, we didn't have too many people from the organization itself, and that's one of the things that I've suggested to the superintendent a few times. We really need to get to have the schools try to work with the association and get some membership in the association, encourage parents to participate in the association so that they can work hand in glove to strengthen the schools. And that doesn't happen very often. I didn't get a flurry of requests from parents from those two schools as a result of those conversations. And it took quite a while to get people from School 44 involved in fighting the decision to close that school.
Right, and I think if Willow were here, she would say that originally the policy was supposed to have parent centers in each of the zones, and then those got closed. And so part of this lack of connecting parents together can be directly traced back to closing those parent centers. So this is something we need to be emphasizing and looking back into, or finding ways to partner, or whatever it takes. So that makes sense. Any other thoughts?
Well, yeah, I kind of want to revisit the task today, what we're really tasked to do today, because, I've heard a lot of really great suggestions and conversation, but I keep having ideas on, like this whole relationship thing. Seems to me we are ready to make those suggestions as to how to bring about those PTAs, PTO groups, or parent groups back together again. Kind of seems to me we're there.
Okay, well, maybe we can put a few suggestions in the third column right now. I mean,
Well, I'm not saying that we should do it now, but I just want to, like, what we're going over the questions right now, because I'm a little confused about, I don't know, the direction that we're going in right now. So I just need help with that.
So let me back up and reiterate the purpose for going through that. So we want to make as strong a case as we can to the policy committee for our recommendations. And that means we need to critique fully the current policy. And so I went through the policy and it said, this is our rationale for X, Y, Z. And I flipped that around and turned it into a question. Each one of these questions comes from a line from the policy that said the policy was going to achieve X, Y, and Z. And so I want to make sure that we're clear that, okay, this part of the policy works, or this policy doesn't work. And so when we come back to have our suggestions and our proposals for the committee, we can come back and say, well, no, actually this doesn't work because X, Y, Z. And we have all of our evidence and our opinions about the weakness and strengths of the current policy as we make our proposals. So yeah, it's a little tedious, but I think I see it as a way to bolster our argument for why we need to make changes in the current policy. Because if we're saying yes, oh, the policy does achieve this, then we're going to wind up saying we don't need to make any changes. But if we're seeing a lot of no's up here, that's a strong argument for why we need to change the policy. Does that make sense?
Yep.
But I mean, if you strongly want to put in a suggestion about how to do the parent relationships or something, we could pop over there. I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking we could go through the questions.
Well, no, I like hearing.
I
do like working through the questions. Personally, I just kind of ready to make it work.
Yeah. Well, keep notes.
Yeah.
If you have ideas, because we're going to circle back and say, okay, here's the problems. This is working. This is not working. What do we do about that? What are we going to say? And then it'll be fed into the proposal suggestions. So, any other comments about this one?
Let's go to B.
Okay, let's go to B. You can find B on the policy. That's a marker for you. So improvement. Does the policy help prevent schools from being centers of concentrated poverty or racial ethnic isolation? That's a juicy question. Sort of. Okay, say more about that.
So, schools are centers of concentrated poverty, but I think some of the schools today are integrated racially and ethnically. It would not be if it was strict income boundaries. And so, yes, some of them.
And I know there's probably a variety of opinions about this, so make sure you capture that. Yes, somewhat. Schools wouldn't be as integrated with the variety of socioeconomically mixed families if families had to stick with their own neighborhood. Of course, it seems to go one way and not two ways, and that's probably your point. So let's hear all opinions about this.
I think for me, the best example is urban-suburban. If urban-suburban mandated for every minority who lived in the city, they could go to a suburban school with that same district, send an equivalent aged kid who was Caucasian into the city, and it was a one-for-one trade,
Or middle class.
I'd be the bee's knees. That, sure.
Yeah, but we're gonna sacrifice the kids' education.
Well, I wouldn't send my kids to the suburbs, so I mean, but my point, like the way we do the same thing in our schools, I don't think that this policy. I agree with Dan somewhat. Schools in the outer rings, like my children's school 52, would not be as integrated if it was neighborhood. I don't think, but I don't think that the inner ring schools are attracting higher income students to those schools in large enough numbers. And I think the policy allows for the families that don't participate in the selection process to get assigned to whatever school happens to have an opening.
So for those families who participate and make choices through the lottery, that provides some kind of wider integration and variety, diversity in the more desirable schools. But among the less desirable schools, in the tougher neighborhoods, the policy doesn't really do anything.
It comes down to the same thing as sending a kid to a charter school. You, by making a choice of sending them there, are selecting a body of students for that school that is different than most of the schools in the district. It's equitable for the parents, but is it equitable for the kids, you know, from the families who don't
families who
have
are
that
not
wherewithal?
participating, what about that?
But even for the ones that participate, if you're in certain neighborhoods,
You mean higher crime neighborhoods or more wealthy neighborhoods?
more wealthy neighborhoods,
Okay.
there'd have to be something phenomenal in the inner circle schools to draw those kids to go to them. And right now, with a couple of exceptions, that's not really true. I mean, a good model for that, though, and that's changed a little bit in the past few years, but a good model for that would be 57 School, which was an early childhood bank, which, you know, is racially diverse. Because you can say to a parent, do you want this is a program, it's pre-K to second grade, and all the teachers have master's degrees in early childhood education, and this is their focus and goal, and people want that. Some people want that for their kid. Now, the problem with it is that then in second grade, they have to find another school. But, you know, so in order to really do that, you'd have to take your, I don't want to say bad neighborhood, but
Economically distressed neighborhoods. We have economically distressed
right,
neighborhoods.
and put super dynamic programs in the schools.
Can I hear from folks over there too? More thoughts?
Well, my goal has always been, whatever I've done with any of the schools, is to help them become a quality school, wherever they are, to raise their performance by staff development, you know, working with parents, creating the community that Ralph created at 17 School, so that it becomes more and more desirable for anybody to go there. And ideally, the people who live in those neighborhoods, you might consider that a distressed neighborhood. One of the ways to make that less distressed is for people to start to really believe in the school in their neighborhood and start to do the things that they need to do for that neighborhood to raise the quality of the neighborhood.
So it's sort of like the stock market. You have to have confidence
but
to
you know,
invest.
Liz, I'll never forget how thankful the parents were at 17 when I bought two-way radios for the all the crossing guards and they had it was like spreading the blanket of safety from the school to the whole neighborhood, and you know, parents, literally grandparents and parents would, I mean, literally to tell me how much it meant to them, because normally they'd walk their child to school, pick them up, but when they knew that there were people with two-way radios connected to me, for pit bull dogs, for anything. And as we talked about before, all you need to do is Google level 3 sex offenders, and you won't be able to, the red dots, you won't be able to see the street names. So there's real substance to their concern. And by putting something so simple in as two-way radios with all the major crossings, I had about 12 crossing guards, one of the most in the city. They just love that. So what if I added walk-in school buses? What if we added mini buses? And I think you'd see a different response. I'll tell you, if I was a parent living in a neighborhood that had those challenges, I want door-to-door service. I'd send my kid over to 33 school. You pick him up in front of the house, he gets let at school, and he drops off in front of the house.
So the task then would be, if we were moving over to the solutions column, is, how do we propose through the policy these kinds of neighborhood
Well, as we said last time,
tools?
one of the, and I hate to be redundant, I guess I am, but one of the drivers here is the New York State Legislature with the strains on the money that they give to transportation. If they gave the district autonomy, we could do almost door to door with minibuses and completely transform and save money at the same time. But I think we can have our cake and eat it too. While we're trying to condense the legislature to allow the district to know what's best for children and make decisions locally, we can also move forward with making safe passage to schools. And there's a number of ways that we can do that. Parents need to be convinced that it's going to be consistent, it's going to be safe for their children.
I don't understand why we can't use why it's an issue with investing into those schools that clearly, aren't doing so well. Like, as far as like investing into stuff, as far as like more sports programs, like adding a junior volleyball team, and girls basketball and boys basketball and cheerleading and step teams, and and that would draw people into those arenas. Like this school could be predominantly, we do basketball, we have the rec center or whatever, we come and practice, try out, whatever. And then it could be another elementary school in their neighborhood that could just predominantly do not arts and crafts, but who deal more with the performing arts, like acting, singing. And 44, a long time ago when I was a kid, it was a performing arts school. So when we went there always was a play or something going on, and we were a part of that. And with plays, most parents come to see their child perform. So as with sports, they come to see their child. People like to see their child doing something other than just sitting in the office waiting to be picked up. So to me, it seems like if we just invest in them having something to do on that level, you know what I'm saying? From kindergarten up, something to do. If we put a saxophone in their mouths at kindergarten, by the time they get 5th grade, they can be professionals. You know what I'm saying? And that's still something to do, and that's something that'll draw people from the suburban areas and from other areas and charter schools back into the city school district, because people want to see their child do it. I cry every time I see my kid do anything. My baby get an award, I'm crying, every award. And it'd be perfect attendance. Because it's exciting for me. I'm a mother, I feel I achieved that. Even though she achieved it, it's still, I'm proud. Yeah. So we want to see our children dance, and we want to see our children live to their potential, and then that makes people want to go to that school. I know my daughter can sing. My kids can't sing. But I'm saying if my daughter can sing, I would want to send her to a school that's going to make her thrive in singing, and give her little singing lessons and choir. They're going to have, then we're going to be called, we're going to have not just Christmas plays, but just for no reason. We're just having we all woke up alive today play. everybody, we want to see
Yeah,
that.
that's a great point. So often the arts or the sports are justified or defended on the grounds of creative thinking, developing creative thinking or teamwork, things like that. But it's also family participation,
Liz,
right? Investment in the arts and sports encourages family participation.
When I was the vice principal, when I was the vice principal, I'm going to echo what Evan just said. I'm going to quickly echo what
Thanks for
Evan.
coming, Molly.
Thank you. Thanks for all your work. I'm sorry.
When I was the vice principal, I went to a suburban school, it was an elementary school, and I said to myself, I think every kid in this school is on that stage. And then I looked over and saw grandparents, and it was packed. Now, the principal was getting leverage for those of the taxpayers supporting that school. I said, and when I became principal, this was 17. I had a 100-member marching band. We got the with tuxedos. We had a gospel choir. We had a show choir. We had a primary age choir. My goal was to put every kid on that stage, and the place was packed. The parents were crying. The parents came up to me and hugged me.
Parents are parents. They were
Yeah,
the same in high school.
and so when a member of the marching band was forced to move out of the school, the parent didn't want that child to leave the marching band. I mean, we performed at the War Memorial. And I didn't get any extra support to do that. It was all volunteer. I got the volunteer, I got all the instruments. That's what I call marketing. So I did a partnership with the Eastman School of Music. I had the only string orchestra in the city, and the students were tutoring. So you had kids walking with violins.
Well, so just to put in the suggestion column, find ways to get every student on the stage.
And that's
Every school.
In every school.
and so that's another thing that says that's a relationship that's built. You see, because when the parent sees the child as being nurtured in that way, then you say thank God.
Honestly, certainly at the School of the Arts, that's how the community is so tight, because you see everybody's kid in all sorts of programs.
But every school can be the School of the Arts.
Every school should have opportunities for the
So that makes it more feasible though, from going to elementary to like School of the Arts, because you'll build a portfolio along the way. Like, I was Annie or the Witch, or it was about whatever. Like you keep going, you start, but it should be like duplicated, like
Every
on
school
both
should.
sides of the town, like not
Well,
just
one
one side of the town.
more point.
Yeah, right.
So when you have a neighborhood school, this is very important. So when you have a neighborhood school, I could do the drama club. I could do the musical that we were performing, and the children would be they could walk home with the parents' permission, because they all walked home. I can have the crossing guards stay a little later, but if I have kids that are bused to the other side, I can't do that.
No, they got buses. They set up buses because the 3 school just had a performance, and they had the buses take them kids home after the play. So,
But I mean,
They adds cost.
on a consistent basis.
Maybe we may be doing it in pockets and funding the transportation for that small percentage of kids to participate in after-school stuff.
But if we're talking community schools, then we're talking about neighborhood kids.
Right.
So getting them to come stay after school for a couple hours is not going to
It's not a bigger lift.
Yeah, as transporting somebody all the way across town.
That's right.
And maybe the closing thing on this letter B here is, I think the answer really has to be unequivocally not a no. I'm being too strong. I think there's got to be a bold no, because Monroe County concentrates poverty. It's not the city. It's not the school district. It's not the people in this room. But the data tells us we are amongst the most concentrated, segregated counties in the country, nationally. I hate that fact, but not talking about it perpetuates it. And what we've done in the last 15 years hasn't made it better. Like I say, I would not send my kids to suburban schools, but what we're doing the last 15 years, we're still at the bottom of the nation. In the
It
nation.
hasn't addressed that problem.
I think Rochester has a problem with understanding its origin. The kids aren't taught about what Rochester really is. We're not talking about the flour mills or the textile mills. I don't think you can know your future if you don't know your past. I don't think that's addressed in a lot of the schools or the libraries or anything else. I think that telling they're winners is one thing, but to teach them why they're winners and why this community was such a great community, we need to go back in the past and let them know what they were before. You know, I think people take pride in knowing who they really are, and I think that has to be addressed. I think they should know about Virgie Smith. They should know about Susan B. Anthony. They should know about Frederick Douglass. And it doesn't have to be on Women's Vote Day or Women's Month, and it doesn't have to be on Black History Month, and Black History Month can be every day. Come on. And I think we need to realize that there are things going on in the country right now that are affecting all of us. I mean, they just locked up 2 news reporters not too long ago for doing downtown, right? And, yeah, and their own co-workers had to try to save them from getting arrested, okay? So, yeah, I know. Yeah, that's the way life is, right? But I'm just saying these things are happening, and we're sitting here and we're doing all this, but we can't ignore what's really going on in their mind. You're thinking like nobody cares about them, that they don't matter, that they're not going to make a difference, that how are they going to fit here? You know, and that's the whole thing, to make them change their mind about the importance of their life, their existence, and that they can make it.
Yeah, but I don't know if you know, if anyone knows Dr. Susan Goodwin.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? She really is an expert. She helped me to develop a community room, and with African artifacts and Hispanic artifacts. And when parents walked in and saw those, they were her artifacts. She loaned them to me. Parents would gasp because exactly what you just said. You have to know.
Right.
You have to be connected to your own humanity.
Right.
And so that was powerful, and that spread throughout the neighborhood. Even people who were not going, even people who didn't have children wanted to see that close.
It's a question about how policy can connect to history and contemporary issues.
So I don't know if it goes with that, but I was going to say about the investment part of the sports and doing stuff that kids like is that it works hand in hand with like the learning, because right now it's like if you go to class and you don't learn, your biggest disciplinary action is going to the principal or getting suspended. But if you can't do something that you really want to do, like you got to sit out on the game next week because you didn't make a C average or B, whatever it is, you know, work to your full potential, then you're more likely to work that much harder because you want to stay in the game, or you want to perform in the play, or you want to do stuff. So to me, that directly ties to everything else. Like schools are not how they were a long time ago. Now there's nothing for elementary school, and then they have to wait until they get to high school, and maybe they may make the team because they may not, or maybe, you know, they'll get to play, they may not. So, you know, to me, like, by y'all taking all of that stuff away from the elementary school, it's already making them, like, not, early in life, not want to be in school and not want to go to school. And unfortunately, life mostly is going to school. Like, to work. Right, to be whatever you want to be, to not just be anything, you got to do a lot of schooling. So
these are instruction and curriculum and instruction questions. I'm not sure about the policy.
Well, I mean,
I think it's incredibly
because it's all
important.
an investment, though. Like, if it's a community school and we send it to this person, like if we have one on the south side, one on every side of town, every quadrant, whatever you got going, and you do performing arts school, and then you do a sports school. So everybody in that neighborhood gets to choose whether they want the kids to go to a performing arts school or a whatever school, you know. And even if they get separated, because kids, just because me and my sister are sisters don't mean we both like to sing. I like to dance, she likes whatever, you know. And so there's still neighborhood schools, so you still could walk to either school or catch a bus down the road. You know, not like it's not a lot of work to get to both schools. And then the kids have something to look forward to going to school other than just an education.
I'd like to, you know, I'm looking at this B here, and the term social economically isolated. I'm kind of really thinking that through, and it seems to me that it's kind of a label that people try to live down to, maybe, or live up to. And for instance, I don't know how much, you know, I'm working with a group of students at a charter school, and I'm taking them to the Geneseo Air Museum this Friday. So I'm not necessarily sure how, the policy talks about the schools isolating, the students and how it becomes an isolation center, when what I'm seeing is there's people like me who want to reach out to a bunch of schools, because I'm not associated with one school. I kind of work with a lot of different schools. And so maybe the policy, could not maybe change the wording on, using terms like this social economic thing, where maybe, the economics of each individual student is not necessarily the point. It's how the community can come together to enhance or to improve the school necessarily, and not worrying so much about how much money little Susie's parents make and Johnny's parents make, or what's the economic of this classroom A, what's the economic condition of classroom A. Maybe we can think about it a little differently, because then we can get to what Ebony is saying about being able to just do plays, because how much money does it take to put on a play? I don't know that it takes a lot of money to do something like that.
Would you, what you just said is very good. If the language for our proposal, instead of for school improvement, are you saying that a goal might be that every school, regardless of labels, has a community that's invested in it, like a local community, so they can put on plays and athletic events?
I'm saying that they don't know it.
Support or broader support?
I'm saying they have it, but they probably don't know it, because now, we've got this label. Like you said, we're one of the poorest districts in the nation, and so we're kind of all living down to that, at this point. When, quite frankly, if any of your kids want to go with me this Friday, you can go.
Free?
Yeah. Well, I'm paying for it, so it's not free. So we could go up to my social economic, condition.
Your capacity.
Yeah, my capacity. So you can go up to that capacity.
Yeah, so maybe just building on that idea of the district partnering more with the other institutions like the library, because as they were talking about local history and knowing your past, the Central Library's local history department and genealogy department is incredibly rich with images and primary documents that relate to Rochester's history. The Frederick Douglass photo that was just found over the winter among our archival collections that we didn't even know we had. And they have online websites and all sorts of things. And I'm sure the library would be happy to partner with the schools and bring some of that stuff to the schools, or have classes come visit the library and learn about their history firsthand.
Here's what.
Yeah, let me just do Robin first.
Yeah, just real quickly, that what Greg's saying, and in terms of what the libraries are doing, these are resources that are there. Some people know about them, some people don't know about them. At the same time, programs like Roland Williams Champion Academy, which is going to be involved in the whole district, is looking for those resources, because he's connecting students that he's got connected his program to take them into those experiences. We've connected Baobab to what he's doing. So he knows what we're capable of doing, and we know where he's at. So he can include his students in the Baobab programs. So that's going on as well. So we just have to make sure that we're connecting all these things to whatever this policy says. This is going to tell us how the families and students end up in the schools that benefit them and the neighborhoods.
I think we're talking about the missing link. And I discovered the missing link, thank God, early on, even as a rookie teacher, because I visited every single house so they had a face to the teacher's name. It was only a couple minutes. I said, listen, you know your child best, and we have to work together. I can't do it alone, and you can't do it alone. We have to do it together. So I built those relationships, even as a teacher. But here's the thing that is so powerful. When you unleash, through positive relationships, the power of parental influence, the power of parental influence, when a mother with all this going on says to the child going out the door today, do good at school today. Now, I want you to do good today. That's all I need as a teacher. It's all I need, okay? I don't need to have, that parent, I just need the parent to say, do good in that school today. Well, the parent says that because he or she feels good about that school, good about that principal, good about that principal is not sweeping things under the rug. The principal, she knows that principal is there and cares about the children and will do everything. So it's like Ebony said, she sees her children on the stage, she cries. I do the same thing as a parent. So when you know the people in that school care deeply about your child and work with you as an authentic partner, then you're going to feel good about sending your child to that school. That's an investment that you're making. There's nothing more important in your life than that child.
So we've got to start with the parents.
So what it basically sounds like is everyone needs to help mentor everybody. And the community needs to work together in mentoring. And it starts with the child and goes on up from everybody. Giving positive affirmations, talking to everybody, making everyone feel like they're needed, they're wanted, and listened. And through that, all the mentoring establishes a good school and establishes a good community. So
somehow the policy has to suggest ways of mentoring, not just ways of connecting to institutions.
Partners.
Right.
Real quick. So the neighborhood school is just the beginning. It's not an end. See? So you can have a neighborhood school and have a principal that shuts everybody out. Okay? So the neighborhood school is only the vehicle that allows all these things we're talking about to happen easier. Okay?
But if we have competitive places, like we're talking about competitive schools, where nobody's working together, nothing really gets done, and the kids don't feel great about being there.
Right.
Neither do the parents.
Can I add this
there's
real
no-
quick? It seems like the whole policy just needs to be reworded because I'm listening to what everybody's saying. It sounds like and I'm reading some of the policy, it sounds like the policy is describing, itself as half empty versus being half full. So it's a lot of negativity in here about, things like the policy is designed to minimize the negativity and the negative impact of mobility. So why can't we just approach that from the other side of the negative impact of mobility and just talk about some of the positive points of mobility? So the whole policy does this, talking about the bad side of whatever.
Good point. With the emphasis here. I'm aware of the time.